How's it going? I'm Ricky with Medina Buys Houses. So I wanted to make a quick video talking about the common situations that sellers encounter where selling to a cash buyer might make sense. The conventional route is to hire an agent, put a sign out front, fix your house up, and put the house on the market. The issue with that is that when you go that route, usually it takes a lot longer. There's a lot more negotiations. There's a lot more fees and closing costs. And for lots of homeowners, that isn't always practical. And sellers are often looking for a better route. So I wanted to go over the common life circumstances that people encounter where going this alternative route of selling to a cash buyer and why that might make sense depending on the situation that you're in. So I looked up a list of all of the houses that we bought and the situations that those people were in, and I wanted to share those with you so that if you find yourself in a similar situation, you can help determine for yourself whether giving us a call might be a good option for you. So without further ado, let's go over what those reasons are. So first thing is too many repairs. So the house needs too much work for you to kind of just put it on the market as is. So whether it needs a new roof, has major plumbing or electrical issues or foundation issues. Typically, today's buyer wants a house that's turnkey. In order for the average homeowner who's getting a loan on their house, the house needs to be in relatively good condition. It doesn't need to be completely turnkey and brand new and remodeled, but in order for most buyers to get a loan, it needs to have a functioning heater, functioning electrical, can't have holes in the walls, usually has to have a decent roof, decent foundation. So if something like that, if all of those things are not in place in the house that you own, it's going to cost money before you can even put it on the market. And lots of people don't have the time, money, or energy in order to fix their house up to put it on the market. So for those people, selling for cash is a good option, or it's at least a good option worth exploring. Second thing that we usually encounter, timeline. So especially in today's market, from the time you put a sign out front and the time you get paid and close on your house, that might be anywhere from 60 to 90 days, sometimes even 6 months. Lots of people don't have that much time, whether they have a job that they're starting in a different state, or they have to get closer to family who might be ill, or bills on the house that need to get paid, and waiting 6 months is just not an option. For those people where they have to get the house sold in a clear, definite timeline, selling for cash is a really strong option, because most cash buyers, including ourselves, they're going to be able to walk the property. And given that we are cash buyers, we're not dealing with appraisals or loan docs or open houses. We can cut all of the fluff, and we can tell you with a high level of confidence, we can close on the property within 7 days a lot of times. But not everybody wants to close fast either. So sometimes people need time. They're trying to find a house that they're buying in another state, or they're getting a family member into long-term care and they need to vet different options and they need a longer timeline. And a lot of times homeowners that are buying your house to move in, they don't want to give you that much time. They want, they need to get out of their apartment, or they need to sell their house. So there's a lot of complexity for a homeowner when they put the house on the market. And it's really hard to line up timelines when you go the conventional route. Dealing with a cash buyer, you're kind of bypassing all of that. You can tell a cash buyer, I want to close in 45 days, or I want to close in 60 days, or I want to close in 5 days. For a cash buyer, usually as long as there's clear title on the house, none of that is a big deal. We can close on the timeline that you wish. As long as everything works for you, we can move as quickly or as slowly as you need to. Third situation is being house rich, cash poor. So a lot of times homeowners buy a home as their primary investment, and all of their wealth is locked up in the house. So maybe you bought the house 10, 20, 30 years ago. You got a great deal on it, or at least respectively, given how much time you've owned it. You now have a house that's relatively low mortgage. You might owe $200,000 to $300,000 on it, and the house might be worth $700,000 or $800,000. And now you have all of this potential equity locked up in the house. And as cost of living goes up, especially if you live in Southern California, which is where we are, and if most people are living on a fixed income, and as cost of living goes up, the money that you're making every month doesn't go as far, and a lot of people need to cash in on the equity on their house. And sometimes people call us and they're a little too far along as far as being strapped on expenses, and they need to access that cash quickly. When you're in a situation like that, investors are a really strong option. We're going to be able to get you paid a lot of times before we even close on the house. We can get you a cash advance, or we can even buy the house, close on it, and then allow you to stay after for a period of time. So that gives you a lot of flexibility in order to figure out your next move, especially if you're in a cash crunch. The other situation is downsizing or retirement. So a lot of times, whether it's you or it's a loved one, like an elderly parent or an elderly family member, they've gotten sick, they're now in long-term care, or they need to go into long-term care and no one's in the house, and you need to pay a significant monthly payment to even get them in long-term care. Another situation is when you're downsizing. So a lot of times people are living in a home that's just gotten too big for them. Maybe you raised a family there, you had a couple kids, but they've all grown up and now they're all moved out, and it's just you, or it's just you and your spouse, and you're in this big 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and it's too much for you to manage. It's a lot more house than you need, and those people need to downsize. Maybe there's a little bit of deferred maintenance. Those people are a really good option to sell to a cash buyer, because a lot of times they're buying another property that's smaller and they need to cash in on this property at the same time and be able to buy another property either in another city or another state. But at the same time, doing 2 escrows is a lot to manage. When you work with a cash buyer, a lot of that is simplified, because the cash buyer can just say, just let me know when you want to close. I can wire the money directly into escrow, and then that escrow can fund the sale of the house that you're buying. And it makes things a lot easier for somebody who's in a situation where they need to downsize or retire to another state or go into long-term care. Another one is tired landlords. So a lot of times we have tenants that don't pay, or they're just a lot to manage, and the landlord might be in a position where they're just done. They don't want to deal with fixing toilets or collecting rents and chasing people down to pay their monthly rent on renewing a lease or fulfilling a vacancy. So in those situations, people have owned landlord property or income property for a long time, possibly multiple decades, and they're ready to cash out. If they want to sell the property either with the tenants or the property has just become vacant and they want to sell, and they want to sell quickly because the tenants maybe didn't take care of the property, or they don't want to manage fixing up the property, get it ready to go on the market, we're a really good option. You just call us. We can deal with the tenants. We can deal with evictions. We've done all kinds of sticky situations in landlord-tenant scenarios. So really good option if you want to go that route. And lastly is a privacy situation. Some people just don't want their house on the internet. They don't want people walking through their home during an open house, or they're elderly and they don't want people coming in and out and nitpicking their house, and there's just a privacy factor. Maybe they have a family member that they don't really want involved or isn't participating in the sale. So in those situations, going with a cash buyer who only really needs to walk it once or twice, and they can make a decision really quickly and get you on the path to closing, and get you a cash offer and get you paid on the property and have you closed in a couple weeks without having to list the property on the internet and do multiple showings or open houses. So those are just some of the situations that we deal with. It doesn't encompass everything that we deal with, but it's very common. If any of that sounds similar to what you might be dealing with, you want somebody to give you a cash offer, somebody who can close quickly or close on the timeline that you need, maybe give you a little bit of cash upfront, allow you time to move out, give Medina Buys Houses a chance and an opportunity to take a look at your situation and see if what we do can work for you. Thanks so much.